Welcome to 30 Minute Reviews. I am Adam. So today we're going to do the review of Mid-90s that I have been teasing for about a week now, and I'm going to do a small editorial about third acts of movies, which is a contentious topic after the Academy Awards this year. So Mid-90s was Jonah Hill's directorial debut. It's a slice-of-life movie about a kid growing up. Well, not really growing up. It's about a kid who gets mixed in with the wrong crowd in, I want to say it was Los Angeles, in, as the movie says, the mid-90s. Now, here's my thing about slice-of-life movies. Slice-of-life movies need to be about someone who you can root for, and then you want them to succeed. So, like, 8th Grade came out last year as well. 8th Grade was about a girl who was trying to come into her own and establish her identity, even if she was doing it the wrong way. So that movie happens, and then at the end of the movie, she kind of has her small victory standing up to the girls who were kind of passively bullying her through the entire movie by not including her, making her feel like the other and all that stuff. Mid-90s doesn't quite do that. Mid-90s, the main character is Stevie, this little kid who gets mixed in with these skaters and who are, not great kids for him to be mixed in with at his age. I think the number one problem is no one in the movie gets their comeuppance. No one in the movie faces a repercussion for their actions. No one in the movie has a victory over someone else. There's no resolution to the movie because the kids are all. It escalates in what he's doing from like trespassing and things like that to like drinking and all these other things, and it's like he gets into a giant fight with his mom, and it's like, and then it's like he ends up getting into a car accident and he almost dies. But that's the end of the movie. He's in the hospital at the end of the movie, and there's no indication that the kid has learned a lesson from the whole thing. If anything, there's a lesson that the mom learned, and it's the wrong lesson, that she shouldn't have been taking this active interest. So this should have been the point where the mom's like, I fucking told you, because she went and she told him not to go hang out with these kids. She brought the kid to the skate shop where he met all of them and like yelled at all the kids about what he was, why are you doing this to my son? Why are you getting him high? Why are you drinking with him? He's way too young for this. And then it's like he continues to hang out with them and gets into a car accident and almost dies. And the mom's just like, oh, you want to see your friends? Your friends are here to see you. Like, no. Like, there's so many things wrong with this movie just on that, in that very basic storytelling facet alone, is that no one in this movie comes out of the movie better, and it's just a continuation of the cycle where he's going to continue to make the same bad decisions over and over again. So, that's why this movie didn't quite get the reception that, say, the other two big directorial debuts this year did, which were A Star Is Born and 8th Grade for Bradley Cooper and Bo Burnham, respectively. But this is easily the weakest out of the three, and I would say it's not even that good of a movie, because it's like, I feel like maybe if you were more into the skater culture, you'd feel like there was more to the movie for you, but for me, it didn't really feel like there was anything there for me as a viewer. I wasn't familiar with how people were in that way back in that time period, and like the closest I ever got to that type of culture was watching Rocket Power as a kid. And maybe it's one of those things where it's a disconnect where I didn't have that, so I don't know what it's like and all of that, but I feel like they could have done more to make the characters more relatable, because a lot happens, and then Stevie never really gets what he deserves for what he's doing. Ultimately, for me, if the movie ended with him ending up dead, that would have been the ideal ending for me, because he does nothing redeemable in the entire movie. Nothing good, nothing, like, entertaining. It's just a movie. So he's just kind of there. So we'll wrap it up there for today with the movie. But let's talk about third acts. And this is something that's been weighing on me for a while, because I feel like the concept of a third act, and if you, it's basically like in a gymnastics routine, sticking the landing, which a lot of movies don't do, and then what is a great movie up until the ending of it is largely ignored and forgotten. So let's take a few movies that were nominated for Best Picture this year. We're going to omit Rogue One, because Rogue One's probably my favorite example of this, where The entire first 2/3 to 3/4 of the movie are entirely forgettable. And then there's that ending sequence, the battle of Scarif and Darth Vader's appearance at the very end of the movie. That is, that's what makes the movie good for Rogue One. But let's use like actual Academy Award nominated movies this year. The Favorite doesn't have a memorable third act. It just kind of like the same thing happens through the movie, and the movie ends. No one really, completes anything. No one feels any different from the beginning to the end of the movie. There's A Star Is Born, which hits it really good early on with Shallow, and the rest of the movie's kind of like, it's a really good movie all the way through. It's just, in my opinion, that song they use in the third act, I'll Never Love Again, is a weaker song to use. If they did I feel like if they did a reprise of Shallow, of just her singing it, that would have been a stronger ending, but it didn't quite land after he kills himself. The ending doesn't quite get stuck. Meanwhile, Bohemian Rhapsody gets considered for Best Picture entirely because of its third act. The first 2 acts of the movie are entirely forgettable, considering it's like it's the same problem with Straight Outta Compton, as I said when I reviewed the movie. There's no real consequence to anything anyone does, and everything kind of works out for them. Then the third act happens, which is a tremendous third act, and watching the Live Aid performance recreated, that it was just fantastic to watch, and it was totally worth the price to see the movie. But that's why it gets nominated. What else was there? Black Panther. Black Panther is another case where the first 2 acts of the movie are better than the third act, even if the plot isn't quite as consistent through the entire thing. The plan isn't great, and a lot of the action sequences in the beginning of the movie are better than the action sequence at the end. And then Infinity War, a lot of Infinity War you can forget about entirely. Like the sequences in Nowhere, the sequences on Earth when like the info dump of the Infinity Stones and all that stuff. But that third act, the Battle of Wakanda and the Battle on Titan and then the snap, all nail the movie in. And I think that's one of the things that, like, even if you go back to Batman v Superman, that movie is perfectly serviceable up until the fact that the movie speeds up its pace right in the third act. Just that way you get Batman and Superman fighting Doomsday, Superman dying. A lot goes on in that third act that really isn't good. And I feel like if Justice League had a better third act fight that didn't feel like the Avengers, then maybe it would have gotten better reviews. Because reviewers are very forgiving of the third act, and it is able to forgive a lot, entirely because it's the last thing they see before they go into the theaters. That's why it's when they leave the theater. That's why it's the most important thing to nail in a movie is the third act. And it's because you need to make that last shot before they leave something memorable. It's like Logan. Logan is another largely forgettable movie. Except for that third act, where he goes, he fights through everyone, then he gets killed by X-24 impaling him on a thing. That scene of him slowly dying. I would even include him burying Professor X right before that as part of it, even though I think that's more of the midpoint. No, that's gotta be at the start of the third act. I haven't watched the movie in a long time. But it is really good, but it's just the beginning of that movie is largely forgettable, and it's like there's a lot to slog through to get to that. Interstellar, same thing. Dunkirk, same thing. You just have to nail the ending. That's the point I'm trying to make. Nailing the ending is the most important thing you can do when you make a movie in this day and age, because you need to make an impression right before the person who's watching the movie goes out to write that review. So if Captain Marvel nails that third act, if that scene of her going and soloing the entire fleet of invading aliens is one of the last things that happens in the movie, then I feel like it's going to get stellar reviews. If that third act is shaky and doesn't quite end right, then it's not going to be as well received. So we'll wrap up there for today. If you watch us on Spreaker, which is where we host the podcast originally, you probably noticed that we have a 5th show now listed on our site. We have 30-minute reviews, Beware of Spoilers, which spun out of it, and unofficial commentary by the Unqualified, which also spun out of it. We have the original show, Expand Your Collection, which I don't really do too much, but I'm going to try and get back on it. There is now a 5th one. Case Files of a Vigilante. That is coming soon. I would say late March, early April, we'll have an episode 0 up, and we'll be launching weekly episodes by late April, early May. That way, it's time to tie in for the release of Swan Song on June 11th, which will be available on Kindle devices as usual. And we will wrap up there for today. I am Adam, and we will be back next week with, I think, Pirates of the Caribbean. I don't know why I pronounce it that way every time. At World's End. Have a good rest of your day.